What's happening, everybody? It's your man Dame BNYDC, and this is Two Mics Up. We back again live. It's Tuesday night. Another great conversation with a returning guest who's been here before. We've shared the first part of her work, and tonight we want to jump in and bring her back to talk about the second half, or the rebirth, if you will, not only personally speaking, but I really like to think of this as, another voice, speaking of courage and healing for so many others in our community that sometimes we overlook, we don't pay attention to, we don't give enough credit to, and how impactful and how important these stories are to others. And like I always say here, on the show, sometimes if you reach one person and can make a positive impact on that one person, then we've done our job here. We've done and served our purpose. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to sit back and welcome to the show once again the incredibly talented author, Rebecca Wells Phillips. Rebecca, how are you doing this evening? I love the smile. I love the energy. How are you?
I am doing great.
Listen, I cannot, we talked about it, behind scenes. I cannot say thank you enough for taking time out to join us again. But for those of you, one who I see you all coming in, please go ahead and let us know where you're watching us from or joining us from in the chat. And Rebecca, take a moment, if you will, to reintroduce yourself to our audience for those who may not be familiar with who you are.
Well, I am Rebecca Wells Phillips, also known as Rachel Blue and Boo Black. I was born and raised in a small town in East Tennessee. I moved to Asheville, North Carolina in 2015. I started writing in high school, but I didn't realize that I loved it so much until I wrote Hating Self by Boo Black in 2000 and I think 13. However, I sat on that book for 10 years and waited till 2023 to actually release it. And so now I have published 4 books. I have a 5th one called Dragonfly Passion, which will hopefully get out this month if I can get that copyright ISBN number. So I am just loving life and transcending everything that I ever imagined.
You're really doing it. Just from watching, like we talked about, just going through the first conversation that we had and to where you are now in your journey. I want to just take a moment to talk about your projects, especially your upcoming projects, which really tackle, the rebirth, if you will, especially on from my take on a very emotional level.
hmm
And I have to ask you, like, what role does storytelling play in turning pain into purpose from your standpoint and the things that you've experienced in your life?
Well, with Hating Self by Boo Black, that was my memoir of me growing up in an all white town in Tennessee and dealing with anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, and all that. So, by writing that book, I let go of the pain. I never wanted to seek out revenge. So, therefore, I didn't tell the town that I grew up in because it could happen anywhere. So, that helped me to heal and to forgive. I'll never forget, but I was able to forgive. And then with Hurricane Helene, resiliency after the storm, when it hit, there was all this trauma that I was going through. But about 10 days, I think, after the storm hit, I decided that I needed to tell the story. And so I interviewed other people about their trauma and experiences. And that helped to pull me out of my fear and depression from what was going on. So that I think that's what everyone needs to realize, that when you're going through something traumatic or painful, the best thing you can do is to write it down. And, whether you use a computer or a pen and piece of paper, this is a chance for you to change your perspective by seeing what you're going through and comparing it to what other people are going through. And I realized with Hurricane Helene, I had it made compared to some other people who lost everything.
I don't know why the gremlins just jumped in real quick. It's okay. In that journey and during that time, what really for you really like digging deeper, how important or how did it really help you really create and expand, your novels and your books, during that time? Was that like the aha moment, if you will, or that starting point for you to really dig deeper? Because I reading the works, like each one seems to, for me anyway, seem to get a little deeper and
Yes.
deeper, and more layers were being removed. And was that the starting point? And really, can you talk about that, from your emotions? Because it
Yeah.
feels like you really poured that out,
Yeah.
for us to read.
Well, with Hating Self, I was just trying to let my family understand why I was the person that I was.
Mm,
And with Loving Self, that was me realizing, I'm no longer that person. I'm
mm,
different now. I'm stronger. And I realized that I can love myself. And then with Butterfly Blossoms, I had been married for over 30 years to the same man. And I realized I had an attraction to women, and
wow.
so I had a dream, and that's how this Butterfly Blossoms even came about. And so that helped me to deal with self acceptance and realizing that
Mm.
you need to live your authentic. I can't even say the word authentic self. You need to live your life, because the best thing you can do is to love yourself. That's the best gift you can give yourself. But with Hurricane Helene, I had released Butterfly Blossoms the day or two before the hurricane hit. And when
Mm,
the hurricane hit, I realized, oh my God, I need to catalog everything that's going on, capture photographs for history, perhaps for school books and colleges and things like that. So originally, that was just going to be just the facts, just the
right.
facts, the facts. And then after I was about 75% done with the book, I realized this book is not finished until I interview people and capture their stories. And so now I've got I've got Dragonfly Passion, which is a follow up to Butterfly Blossoms, where the protagonist Sally is going to be with her childhood best friend. And then I had another dream and realized that I was doing Lift Our Voice, Abuse Survivors Speak Their Truth. And I've
Mhm.
already interviewed about 5 people about their different types of abuse that they've gone through, starting with childhood or as an adult, as a married woman or whatever. And so it was very painful for them to give
Mhm.
me those stories. So I've backed off a bit, because I feel like you shouldn't give me your story until you're ready to deal with it. It can be
Right.
very painful and triggering to bring those memories back up. And I had originally thought I could get it published by the end of this year, but I've decided to push it off until next year.
Hmm. You bring up a point. You talked about, first time, and you mentioned again tonight. Growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and then, being married, for 30 plus years, and then, you know, not, ending that relationship and that marriage, and really coming into your own, realizing, this portion wasn't for me. And
Hmm.
I think sometimes, like, how painful was that? Because we didn't really dive into it the first time, but how painful is that? Like, I can only imagine what family or friends may have had to say, right? And I
Yeah.
want to touch on it. If we're really going to talk about it, I want to really talk about it tonight if we can. But what was that like? Probably dodging daggers and darts and
Mhm.
all kind of comments. How painful was that? But I can also understand that had to be a really critical part too of your rebirth.
Yeah, you learn who your friends are when you make a change like that. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that my friends were homophobic or anything like that, but technically I lost all my friends that I
Wow.
thought were very, very close to me. And my family was not happy. I've been trying to rebuild my relationship with my daughter and grandchildren, but that has been a struggle. My ex-husband and I are still, on friendly terms, and he moved away, and all that. We're still considered friends, but it's not the same. So I realized that as growing up in an all white town, I always felt alone, and
Mm.
I continue to feel alone. And I realize that perhaps I will always be alone. Even when I'm in a
Wow.
relationship with someone else, I will continue to feel alone. And I think that you have to be good with that. Like, you have to
Mm-hmm.
learn to survive on your own. And you need to realize that God doesn't want you dependent on another person. He wants you to look
Yeah.
towards Him when you need that strength. And I think that's why this keeps happening.
Yeah, I mean that's powerful, But I wanted that because I don't want to say there's a lot of people, but there may be more people than we realize, maybe going through similar situations and
Hmm.
having to deal with it. And I just wanted to ask that
Yeah.
because if we turn the page even more, um, just from the brief reading that I could do about Dragonfly Passion,
Yes.
seems like it explores the transformation and healing during chaos. All of these things, right, right. All of these things going on around you. And, you know, I want to make it personal, like for you, like what personal or creative moment
Hmm.
really sparked that idea for that particular story?
Yeah.
And how does it mirror your own evolution as
Yes.
a woman first, and a black woman, let's be even more specific, and as an artist and an author?
Right. Well, I think I've mentioned before that a lot of my ideas come from dreams. And so
Mm-hmm.
people say that's usually like your subconscious, or it could be your spiritual guides, or it could be from God Himself. And I feel like it was given to me. The whole premise of the book, the name of the book, everything comes through dreams. And so I I just am trying to become my authentic self. I want to be honest. I want to write about what I know and what I've experienced, and show people that you are more than your experiences. You are here for a purpose. You are here to help others, and you are given your own barrel of burdens. Each one of us have
Mm.
our own burdens. And so the dragonfly transformation for me is, I think, just realizing that I will go through change, and I'm supposed to. And I'm supposed to get stronger with every challenge. And I feel like I have. So I'm constantly challenging myself to grow and to
Mm.
learn and to be more empathetic with others. And I welcome people's stories. I talk to complete strangers at the grocery store and out shopping and gas stations and everything. And I tell people, I said, if you've got, everyone has a story, and you can tell your story. You don't have to be a great writer. You just have to start. So
Right.
we all need to not be stagnant and stay the same. We need to
Yeah.
grow.
Mm, that's powerful. I love that part. You have a purpose. You're here. You have a purpose to serve, and you're doing that very well in your lane. Really taking on that purpose, and a lot of times people don't necessarily believe in. Um, I don't want to say God, but these your dreams that you
Yes.
have. I do think that they're very important. They do serve a purpose in shining a light on, sometimes when you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, that dream is telling you,
Yes.
hey, have faith and believe in this, and
Yes.
this is what you're being called to do. And I just really love that because I find it to be so true. I mean, I experienced it, and I think it's important that people understand sometimes you get in your own way uh when you dismiss these things, right?
Yes.
Take advantage of it. It's being called or shared with you for a reason. And you know to even dive even further, we briefly talked about it, where I mentioned just the symbolism,
Hmm.
right, of the dragonfly. uh
Yes.
for me, it often, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, it represents that self-realization and change, right? And
Amen.
and so I want to ask you, how does that symbolism really go further and shape your narrative,
Mhm.
in Dragonfly Passion, and perhaps, your own chapter in life, because you've gone through several different chapters just in this short time that we've spoken, from that young girl,
Yeah.
being isolated to a woman who went through a marriage and probably felt awkward, or maybe odd or off, because
Hmm.
maybe this didn't jive with really who you were, and then you
Exactly.
evolved into, and became that woman that you are now. But the symbolism of it, like, was that in, again, the dream that came to you, and was that in, like, purposeful to have that representation of the dragonfly? Because I think that's so key, in
No,
that writing.
no, because like I said before, the ideas and even the titles of my books come from God or spiritual God or whatever
Sheesh.
you want to say. So, when I did Butterfly Blossoms, I didn't realize that was actually a flower. That's actually a plant. And whenever I wrote out Dragonfly Passion as my title, I found out there's also a plant or flowering plant called Dragonfly Passion. I also have tattoos, and so I have a tattoo of a dragonfly on my back. Um, so everything just kind of comes together. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm changing. I'm definitely not the same person, and I'm not supposed to be. But
Mm-hmm.
it's I don't control it.
Mm-hmm.
I I write what comes into my head, and I don't plan anything. I don't plan
Mm.
anything at all. So if you read any of my works, you'll think I organized and planned it, but I don't plan anything. I have a feeling that I need to write today, and I sit down at the computer and I type. And then after I type for however long, I reread what I just typed, and I'm like, who the heck wrote that?
Almost like an out of body experience then. Like, you're
Yeah,
really you're so in tune that you're not realizing what you're actually putting down on paper until
no,
you actually go back and read it and reflect on it, and then is that how you continue to build from
yes,
that initial? That's incredible.
I
That
plan.
that's
And I'm a planner. I'm an organizer. I plan my whole life. I'm a Virgo, but with my writing, because people will say, well, how many words did you write today? I don't play
Mhm.
that game. I work 12-hour shifts. I write whenever I feel like writing, but usually it's because something has urged me, or I get a thought and I send myself a text, or I wake up in the middle of the night and type out something that I just woke up from. So
Mhm.
that's how my writing goes.
I love that. So then let me ask you then. So, from Boo Black and your previous works, like, what has the response been, or have people reached out to you just saying, identifying that they connect, with that? And is there a story or anything that in particular, or a conversation that maybe you've had that you can share with, that kind of, really impacted a person? Because I think that's an important part as
Yes.
well, to be able to share,
Right.
that type of conversation.
Yeah, what usually comes up with hating self is people tell me their son or daughter um, tried to disappear themselves,
Mm,
or they've dealt with a lot of depression, and they usually get the book for them, or if they've lost their child, then they get it for themselves to try to understand better as to why their child disappeared themselves. And so what I try to explain to those parents are that when you're in that moment of crisis, you are not yourself, and you're not thinking. And even though you have a mom and dad that love you and a house over your head, and maybe you've got 1,000 friends, you don't see that. You are in
mhm,
a black hole, a dark place, and nothing anyone else says or does can fix that. You
mhm.
have to pull yourself out of it. So, I have a friend that I dedicated Loving Self by Boo Black to, and his 14-year-old son um, disappeared himself because of bullying at school. And
Wow.
so, I wrote it with him in mind. He was someone I couldn't reach. I couldn't reach. And so I wrote these books specifically to try to reach people before they get to that point, to make them realize they need to ask for help. They need to go outside their parents or family, because you need someone outside of that to help you, to
Hmm.
see. And you have to feel like you have a reason for being here, your purpose. And we all have purpose.
Mm. That's powerful. I mean, I get chills. This, you never really realize that sometimes there are people out here that have it worse than you do, and
Yes.
they're dealing with things that are heavy for them to carry or even talk about. And it's a beautiful thing that you, from your experience, have been able to connect with other people to help at least try to give them something tangible, to work with, because we don't have enough resources, one, and I don't think we have enough conversations like this uh, for people, especially in our community,
Hmm.
that are going through so many things. And I want to, just say thank you for doing that,
Thank
and
you.
just being committed to your work, and just sharing, your life story, and the things that you've done. But I want to go even a little bit further, because in my opinion, you've made like, what's the word? Um, it's like a bold move, if you will, giving survivors of abuse, right, a microphone and a lane to speak,
Hmm.
especially in lift our voice.
Yes.
And abuse survivors speak their truth and all of that, and they should. But how did you build truth in those spaces, right? Because there has to be some comfort for
Yeah.
people to be able to sit down and talk about that. So how did you build that truth in that safe space?
Hmm.
And even a second part to that, um, what truths maybe surprised you or reshaped your own perspective? Listening to other people,
Hmm.
in that safe space.
I believe that when I wrote Hurricane Helene, Resiliency After the Storm, that people saw that I was not trying to get rich, but I was trying to share people's pain and resiliency during a horrible disaster. And so the
Hmm.
people who read Hurricane Helene saw that I could be trusted, first off.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the people who were interviewed in Hurricane Helene talked about me and how I interviewed them and I used exactly what they said, word verbatim, and I didn't change anything or try to do anything to what they said. And
Hmm.
so that has given me a lot of doors opening. And so when I talk to people, I have like a little contract agreement I send to them, and it outlines exactly the questions that I will ask in the about the abuse. And I also say that I'm going to give you a free autographed copy of the book when it's published. And if there's any questions on here you don't feel like answering, just don't answer. If you would like to be anonymous,
Hmm.
you can be anonymous. So I've given them all these outs, and I give them the option to either do the interviews face to face, over phone calls, through Zoom, and even the ones that have had very traumatic events, write, they want to write it out, and I will
Hmm.
use what they've written. And I, of course, will send it to them for their approval prior to being printed. So I've built the trust just through letting them have control. I think that's the best way to put it. I let them have control.
That's awesome, and it just makes me think too, Rebecca. Like, if I'm being honest, like, you are like the cup, you're the vessel, that people are pouring into, and it has to be a lot on you sometimes to hear other people's, traumas and stories, right?
Yes.
And I have to ask though, who is pouring into Rebecca, because you need someone or a circle to pour into you, for you to be able to continuously provide what you provide to others. So I'm just curious, just listening, who's pouring into Rebecca's cup?
I have to just say God, because
Mm,
I don't trust a lot of people and I don't ask for help. And when I deal with, you know, anxiety and depression, I of course had counselors in the past, but Since Hurricane Helene, I have not sought out any counselors, even though I probably should have had one after all that happened. But I seek God. I mean, I don't go to church anymore because of craziness that kind of happens there
Mm,
sometimes. But I have a relationship with God, and I trust Him and His guidance. And I really don't have a human person that I
mm.
have pouring anything into.
We got we
You
got we got to work on it. We got to get somebody. I mean, because it's important, like for you to be able to stay so energized and so focused
Yeah,
on the work that you're doing, and it's incredible. It's almost like being a counselor to a degree, and
yeah,
having that, and that's a lot to then take and put pen to paper
yeah.
and then develop, these stories. It's really incredible. And even further is like, your work seems to live in a space where vulnerability meets strength,
Yes.
right? And that's incredible. And like, it's, as a creator, like, how do you balance, that as well, when you're revealing deep truths while still protecting, if you will, your own peace of mind and trying to keep your own boundaries? That's got to be tough. But like, how do you do that?
Well, whenever I do interviews with anyone, like I always have a recorder and I record it, and then I wait 24 hours before I actually transcribe because it's so painful taking it in.
Hmm.
I'm very empathetic and I feel a lot of things, so I'll wait 24 hours before I start to transcribe, and then I'll transcribe it within the day, within hours. I will transcribe the entire interview, and then I will delete the recording because I am not going back to it ever again. So, because what happens is I hear it the first time and I type like 90 words a minute, right? So I type it through what I can type out first, and then I rewind and I do it again and pull in and get everything accurate. So I end up hearing this interview at least 5 times to
Hmm.
have it
Hmm.
accurate, and then I delete it because there's no reason to go back to it. There's no reason for me to relive it, and so I delete it. And like with Hurricane Helene, I never read the book. I didn't read the book, let's say, until after it was out and everybody else had it. But then when I picked it up to try to read it, it's like I couldn't. So I I try to limit the exposure, and like if I interview someone, I
Hmm.
wait a week or two before I interview someone else. I'll never have interviews back to back because it is very painful. And it's just I don't know how I do it, honestly. I don't know.
It's incredible just listening. Uh, and I get it, because sometimes when you do, because I know I sometimes in an edit, or just kind of going through an episode, yeah, I might listen to it 7 or 8 times, and it does, then you're able to. For me, it's the thing. Well, okay, I picked out the thing. Okay, this is good. This is good. This is good. And it does become a thing, though. I do try to stop,
Hmm.
um, so it doesn't become repetitive. But sometimes for me, though, on a good day, I could do 5 recordings in a day.
Wow.
So yeah, it becomes very repetitive in a sense. Then it's like, sometimes I do need a break. Like, I try to give myself a break, uh, just so that I'm not overloaded. And I'm thankful that I do have other people that help and help do other functions, which
Hmm.
is great. But it is a lot, and you are incredible. That's just incredible to me. Where you just delete it,
I delete it.
and you just you're done with it, and you build from what you've typed and what you heard, that's an incredible talent. Um,
Thank
and
you.
then, like you say, you work 12-hour shifts. So,
Yes.
and then to be able to include, this portion into it is an amazing gift. And I want to ask that, we've been able to grow and continue to grow here, 2 mics up, and the audience participation a lot of times on the playbacks,
Hmm.
even on, just listening, streaming platforms, our audience has grown and the conversations have gotten very deep.
Oh.
And I want to kind of ask this question really for the audience, being part of the conversation. If they could take one action, after hearing your message,
Hmm.
what would you want that to be? And how can they become part of your movement, because you really have a movement towards collective healing and empowerment, because I think both of those go hand in hand. When I go back and I look at your work, and from the things that I've read, you really bring healing and empowerment together in a very great package.
I want people to write. I want
Mm,
people to tell their story, whether it's on paper or in their computer or a journal or diary. I want you to realize that you have it within you to write. You don't have to be a perfect speller or know grammar. There are people who can help you write, ghostwriters and such. I too have offered to assist people with writing. I self publish, so I do know how to upload to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever, but you just have to write. And that, through writing, you heal yourself and you grow, and you are able to see how you can help other people.
mm. That's powerful just in itself, Rebecca. I want to, and I want to shout, hey Sam, and everybody watching in the background. Thank you. My co-host is, he's on the road, so I thank him for tapping in and joining the conversation and watching the show. Um, I want to give you a moment, Rebecca. What is something that we haven't touched on this evening that you would like for our audience to know more about, whether it be you,
Hmm.
your writings, because you have several books that I think are incredibly they tell incredible stories from what I've been able to gather and sit down and read.
Yeah.
But what is it that you would like to share that maybe I haven't asked you this evening?
I do daily live events, or not daily as often anymore, but I try to remind the people that we are all part of the human race and that we need to
Mm,
be kind to one another because we don't know what someone else is going through. And so there's been such a division and separation for a while in
mm,
our country.
mhm.
And so I need people to realize that, love is the only way. Martin Luther
Yeah.
King Jr. said, you can't fight hate with hate, you have to fight it with love. And I ask people to be patient and kind. Even if you don't agree with one another or you don't understand why there's people in the LGBTQ plus community, just know that love is not bad, no
Right.
matter where it's directed. And what I've learned is that it's not always the vessel that you're in, it's not always the body that someone falls in love with. It is your soul, it is your
Mm,
heart, who you are on the inside. So don't get caught up in what's on the outside.
I love that. And you mentioned something too, that you know love one another, and we still, a lot of our community, we still have this stigma, and disdain, I guess, if you will. You mentioned it, the LGBT community, LGBTQ, I'm sorry, community. Um, from your perspective as a person who's living in that life, I, how how can I put this? How would you explain to those watching, like, just have a conversation? If you want to know more, just have a conversation versus just making these off-putting remarks or
Yeah.
comments when
Yeah.
you find out, because that's got to be tough for you, not only as a black woman, but then people want to go ahead and then throw more rocks at you. Like, how tough is that, to keep pushing forward as an author and a woman of color and LGBTQ?
It is traumatic.
Mm. I
um,
bet.
I again, I have to lean a lot on God because I can't lean on the human form to help me
Mm,
through the challenges. So I just remember that I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a purpose. I have my own burdens. Love is good. Love is positive, whether it's a man or woman or whatever. So I just
right.
remind myself that I'm doing exactly what God said in the Bible. Love thy neighbor as yourself. And I'll just
Okay.
keep saying that over and over and over.
Look, that's the best way to put it. People have to evolve, like we've been talking about tonight, through your works. Evolve, transformation. Giving it to God. Living in your purpose and figuring out. And I think that's the hard part for some. just to really figure out what their purpose is. And I too agree with you. Everyone that God has created, we all have a purpose. And sometimes some of us find it early in life, some of us find it later in life. I know for me, it was just a similar situation, finding it more later in life where, almost losing my life
Oh,
helps turn a spark or a page. And when you hear a doctor say to your wife and your child, "Well, Miss Cunningham, we don't know what else to do. If
mm,
you're a praying woman, a God fearing woman, it's time to pray. We don't know what else to do for your husband." I remember laying there listening. I'm looking at the doctors like, "Excuse me," like, "Hello, I'm right here." And I too, like you, uh, I grew up in a very religious home, but in my adult life, I myself in the church for whatever, we have our own disagreements about certain things,
yes.
but I am a God fearing man, and I remember laying there saying, God, you have to know what's in my heart. I know you know what's in my heart, and
Hmm.
I know you have to have more in store for me. And through that journey, in less than a month, I lost 60 pounds, and I'm going through my body shutting down, liver, kidney, and all
Wow.
kind of things going on. And through that, there was a time 8 days later, I was being released from the hospital. And I remember, and even it still happens for me to this day. I still smell the grass when I walk outside.
Mm,
I see the bluest blue in the sky. I see people in color now.
hmm.
And it's just about, whatever the Lord has presented me with this platform. Went through several different things, but ended up here. And I feel like this has been my calling. So, to sum that up, I wish you continued success in everything that you do as we come to the back end of this conversation. But I do want to take another moment, Rebecca. One, do you have any any additional news where we can go out, because I want our audience to go out, support you,
Hmm.
buy your book, find your book, read your books. Do you have any dates coming up, any live dates coming up that maybe you can share? I want to, get behind you and your work that you're doing.
Well, I always tell people to go to my website because it has links to my 4 books that are already published. So that's www.rebeccawellsphillips.com. I'm also on Facebook, but you got to look up Becky Wells Phillips on Facebook. I'm on 12 social platforms. So technically, if you Google my name, it'll all come up. My books are available for purchase at like Firestorm Books, Mallard Props Books. Those are down here in Asheville area, but also Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, Ingram Spark has it. So some libraries and schools can order it that way. And I always welcome emails. If anyone has questions about writing books, publishing their own books, or just wanting to talk to me personally about healing and purpose and turning pain into purpose, you can always email me at RebeccaWellsPhillips@gmail.com.
Love it. We're gonna go ahead and make sure that we put that in the show notes, your email as well, along with your website. I want to make sure that everybody goes out and gets behind, you, because we have so much going on, like you mentioned, in today's world. Uh, Things that are pulling us further and further apart from one
Yes.
another. And some of those things, I don't know any other way but to say them, are some of the most asinine things and reasons why people are doing the things that they're doing and taking the stances that they're taking.
Hmm.
Makes no sense to me. It's not an ounce of common sense in any of it. So
Nope.
to have a person like yourself that's bringing a fresh breath of air, a new perspective, and really helping support others in our community, that's what it's all about. Love having you here. You're always welcome to
Thank you.
come back. you
I
know
will.
Look, your next work, or next, bring the books back. We'll dive into that as well. Rebecca, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and I thank you for taking time out tonight to be here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Always, 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 always. And before we go, ladies and gentlemen, I have to share and I have to say thank you to Rebecca for really just making this a night about purpose. We all come here, whether you're watching this live, I see some of you in the background. I understand maybe this might be triggering for you. that's fine. You don't have to speak tonight. But whether you're watching this on the playback and you have comments or questions, we're going to leave Rebecca's information there. Please reach out. If you feel that you might need some assistance or someone to talk to, please take advantage of it. If you know of someone who may need or want to talk to someone, please share tonight's conversation. It's very important that we find ways to get ourselves the help that we need. And sometimes it could be just through conversation.
Yes.
You'll be surprised what, just having someone bend their ear and take the time to listen can really do for you, not only in your day, but maybe in your life. So please do, reach out. I thank you all for, just following, watching, being part of the tribe. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and join our Two Mics Up Collective. We're actually going to be spending that into something a little bit bigger and a little bit greater, hopefully, from my mouth to God's ears. And He gave me this idea, so we're going to pray that this actually works. But go ahead and subscribe. Look, you can buy us a cup of coffee for $1.99. You can go ahead and subscribe for $9.99 a month. We're really working on bringing you some more conversations and behind the scenes conversations and some education that I'm hoping that Rebecca is going to play a part. She just doesn't know yet, but I've already got her written down and tagged in, but we'll talk about that once we get off the show. But thank you all again for your time this evening. And like we do at the end of each and every show, I'd like to leave you with a couple of things. May you all stay safe, stay blessed. Mike's out.
007.